Alright, so I have this wreath here, and this is one that I come across some time ago, and believe it or not, got these for like $2.48, so not very bad, and it's a 12-inch, and a matter of fluffing it up. So I have my, I guess you would call that kind of a weave garland, and it's wired, and this was during fall, and you can see the price here at Walmart. This one was from Walmart as well, a plaid, and the theme I'm going for here is a country Christmas. So I have the, padded, wood padded station wagon and some barns, and we're just going to see how this turns out. I want to do a little bit quick, speedy, and different Christmas wreath, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So let me flip out this wreath. That's the very first thing we have to do, and that is super simple to do because you can see this one, and you can see how the fronds are just woven, and so it's just a matter of pulling them out and fluffing them outward, and just go with that flow and get it fluffed up, and then you can shape it even more so. And that'll just take a moment to do. It won't take long to go around there, especially if you can lay that flat on a table like I have it here, and you can just work it and go around as you go and fluff it outward and upward, outward and upward. And they'll lend themselves to you because, well, they've been stored that way, and they are ready to be decorated and fixed up to make a great welcoming Christmas wreath on someone's door. So let me get around this, and we're going to build this out pretty quick. It won't take much work. It'll be pretty quick. So I have my wreath spread it out and fluffed up per se, and you can see some of the branches are going inward, and then you have up and out. And that's kind of the way it goes, but as you go around, you'll work it the way you need to. You'll need some pipe cleaners or wire or zip ties in order to put everything on, as well as tie down your ribbon. And as I said before, I had this theme going of a country Christmas, so I went ahead and I got out 2 of the panel wagons, and I went ahead and I put their ornament tie on them. You'll need at least 2 on a 12-inch wreath to give it balance, because there'll be other elements that you'll add to your wreath. And between the padded wagon and the barn and the ribbon, it'll probably be flowers or something, berries, different things. So we'll work it out as we go. Now, your pipe cleaners probably will not be seen. That's the idea. We don't want them seen, so our ribbon will be fluffy enough. But we do need to hoist them to the wreath itself, and pipe cleaners kind of ensure that nothing scratches anything. That way, if you're hanging it on a surface like a door or something where the wind may be swinging and so forth. You could do the zip ties, that won't hurt either, but just to give you some ideas of, why you might use one versus another, you might have to give it a little forethought. Alright, so we're going to get started laying the ribbon in, because that's the first thing. You could also add some lights. I thought about that, and since the plaid is really the theme of it, and I may just intertwine these in there, but I'm going to go with my plaid first and get it going. Now, my pipe cleaners, I am repurposing. I got these off of a craft, and they were like wrapped in a circle, but you see how perfect they are. They're in great shape. Now, the width of my wreath is very, very narrow. I mean, it's like just barely anything there. So I'm just going to cut these to where they can work like a twist tie in the back when I put my ribbon around. Now, whenever you cut your pipe cleaners, it's real important that you, if anything, just put a bend in it. Do not crink it. If you mash it down, you're going to have a sharp point once you cut that. So just letting you know, I'm going to go about 3 inches or so and cut those pipe cleaners and get you a pile going. I probably have about 16 ready for myself. Now, with your ribbon, when you roll it off of your spool and put it in the center of your wreath, works really good too. You want to allow yourself 2 inches. Just pretend that 2 inches isn't even there. So if you need to, you can kind of put a little I don't know, snug to it, so that that 2 inches, just pretend it's not even there. And the idea is wherever you start is going to either be your top or your bottom. Either way, you'll be covered up. And just pick a spot and go. So give yourself that 2-inch tail and go ahead and tie it onto your wreath to get your ribbon started. And then that way you get that loop effect that you need. And you can cover this up easily whenever you are going in there. I want to leave myself get you a good length one, because you'll have another tail of your ribbon or something else that you'll be tying on in that same spot. And then that way you'll have plenty that you can work with. And I'm just going to give it a single turn because I know I'm going to be messing with that again, and I'll need to fluff that up. So see, if you fluff it correctly, you're not going to see your pipe cleaner. You really won't see it. It's going to be masked. And then loop it up. You want to be generous with your ribbon. Don't be too stingy, but make it make sense. Like on this 12-inch wreath, I want you to think about every 4 inches. So if you're doing something every 4 inches, that means you're giving yourself an inch of grace. And if you had to measure that, that'd probably be 5 inches where you go back into your wreath again, to give it that loopy effect so it really looks professional. And with this very thin, not thick type ribbon, it can tell on you a lot whenever you're working with something like this. And one thing about using a brighter color twist tie when you're first working your wreath is you can see it. And here I am going with a black. It should be able to see it pretty good. And once again, just bringing that and giving it a little tie down. And I'm going to pull that in a little bit snugger. And there we go. We're already going. And we're just going to weave this into the wreath. And like I said, leaving your spool in the center can give you a little more control, so it's not in your way when you're going through there. And about every 5 inches, I'm going to put mine onto my wreath. And I'm going to go in that fashion all the way around the wreath. So I'm right back here where I started at. I've already got all that loop through. And I'm going to make a half loop there, just so I can put it on there and cut my ribbon. And I'm just going to allow that little bit of a hump. And then that way I can tie it into that existing one that we did a while ago. And you can turn that tail under if you want to. And then that way when you put these two together, it'll look right. So I'm going to take this one, and right over the top of it, where I turned that tail under, and that's that 2-inch hoop, or 2-inch difference we left. And then that's the one with the turned tail. And I'm just going to put them together and fasten it right back where I had it. And that's just one way you can do it. There's so many ways, because by the time you put a bow and all the elements that you add to it, it won't be even you'll forget where it started at. You might find it while you're working on it, but later on, when you get it out next year, you won't even know where you had it at. So I'm going to give that a couple twists just so it's there, because now I know where I started at. So the next ribbon we've got is this brown one. Now what's really great about it is you can run this across this, and kind of do it back and forth. So let me see how that works. I've got this brown going, and I tied that down too quick, so I should have left that untied. Maybe I can catch it under there. Just easy does it. So I'm going to take this brown, and I'm going to just, you don't have to have that much extra with it because it's already tucked. But you could still do just a little bit over a couple of inches like we did before. And then I'm going to fasten that down again. Have it in place. So like I said, this will be my top or my bottom, depending on what all elements I put on it. Now, what I'm talking about is I have that going across here, and you can go in behind. It just depends on how you want it to look or lay, or you can come out here and then go back across and just let the limbs kind of weave it, and that just looks too, I don't know, pushed down to me. And with this one, I may go out further. I may tie it so that it is kind of doing a run across. So at this point, I'm going to go right here to the center of this one, and I am going to make sure I got plenty and push that loop out, and I'm going to go slightly under the plaid and see how that looks, if I like the way that looks, like a billowing effect. Might have to pull out more to get that look and tuck it down here. I want to tie it underneath this second hoop, because I do think that that might overpower my plaid, and I just want it kind of in there. So I'm actually bringing it over here to the side, but underneath that plaid, and it's not going to matter much. Now with this, I'm going to bend my greenery back over it. Tail run away from me. Alright, so I've got that going. And then I'm going to go, once again, I want to go to the second one. I've got that in the center, so it'll be 1.5. So it actually will have to go in the center, fix all this back after a bit. So I'm going to go to this next one because it looks right. It looks like it should. Alright, it was just the way I was looking at it. It's going just fine. So we're going every 1.5. So you got your half. Then we'll go into the next loop. Once again, you know, just make sure you catch it right so that when you go under there, you have plenty of your weave sticking up, so you don't get it smothered in the midst of it all. And as far as camouflaging the mesh, it looks just grand. It really does. I haven't had a bit of trouble with it, and it's just beautiful. I love the mesh. I think it's just suitable for a country Christmas. It's that burlap look to it. And anytime we can use burlap, I'm on board. Okay, so we got that one going. And I just have a few more. I drug everything into the wreath that I had laying on my table. I need a gigantic table. I really do. Because I will take every bit of that space. It seems like no matter how much room I give myself, I need more. Alright, so once again, by the time you go out here and you gather it, like if you wanted a guide, if I go here, then I know by the time I tuck that under there and get it tied on, is the right amount that I need in order to give me the fluff and not look buried, but have that little bit of a tuck. And so once again, tie that on, and just hoping you guys get the idea. I'll give you a front look once I get this tied on so that you can see how it's looking so far. I don't know how well you can see it on the camera. So once again, if I come over here and I pinch it, that gives me just the right amount I need under here. It's right where I need it in the center per se. And then here we are getting ready to be at the end again where we started. So once again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come just beyond it a couple of inches, and I'm going to cut it there, and then I will bend it and tuck it and tie it into the existing one. And that gets that done. So just do that little fold that under, about 1/2 inch. I just kind of press it a little bit. You can do this real easy. I'm not gluing any of this ribbon. That makes it easier to rework your wreaths. You can glue it after the fact if you want to, but I try to glue as little as possible. I try to work my wreaths and do the most minimal amount of glue as possible, because I am really one to rework my wreaths, and it saves on buying another wreath. Some of them, when you glue them, there's a lot of times you cannot rework them. There's just too much glue that's got the leaves all mushed up and too much going on. There's no way that you can do it. So this is what we have thus far. So you can see how that's looking. Isn't that gorgeous? I think that looks just gorgeous. I really do. And that just looks so good. And it's just enough. So what you can do is, if you wanted to, you can pull these out further and bring your mesh, burlap mesh ribbon more to the center, and bring the plaid more outward. And that looks really good doing that. Just pulling it over. Okay, so this is pretty much my plan. Now, over here is where I started and stopped. So I'm thinking I'm going to put a side bow versus a top or bottom. I'm going to put it to the side. And I've already laid my elements where I'm planning on putting them if it works out. So for the time being, I need to move this because we are going to do some pine cones. And Mother Nature saw fit to give me some. So I'm going to actually put floral wire on them so I can tie them to my wreath. A lot of you have already experienced this. This wire actually is the wire that comes out of the bows when we make our bows and we take the wire out. All of that comes in handy. But sometimes just having floral wire is more beneficial when you're trying to make something like this and get it done. So I may just pull this out of that hole, and then I can easily put it back in whenever I'm done. These work fine too. If it boils down to it, you can use the wire that comes out of the ribbon. Okay, so I've picked out 5 pine cones here, and this is the largest one, and it's still going to work. I've laid it up against my wreath and it looks suitable. Any of these loose pieces that's broken, I'm just getting rid of. And you can choose to go about anywhere on your pine cone, but whatever you do, you need to almost like loop it, like give it enough wire so that when you go around it, you can twist it to itself, then leave yourself a tail to where you'll be able to put it onto the wreath. So I am going to go somewhere in here, and I'm just going to feed that around it. Just find a good spot, go in between those needles. And as you see, I've got a right much wire coming out. I make sure I've got plenty of wire so that when I feed it back over here, I can twist that inside and let it cross, and then I can bring this longest one back around it, and there we go. We have that first one already situated. Make sure I've got them kind of twisted together. Now I've got my ends that I can put to the wreath, so I may just leave all of that tail on there just to make sure when I reach to the other side, if I have to, I can wrap it back. And I'm going to cut a little bit off, but I've made sure I left myself plenty of tail so that I can feed it around my wreath. So that's the first one, but you get the idea of where I'm going here. And these little pieces, I keep some of those larger ones because they can actually work real well in other arts and crafts. So I've gotten 3 done, and I'm down to 2 more. And this is just really easy. Like I said, you just feed it in there in between your pine cones, little needles per se, is branches. And then by the time you get it over and meet the other end, you just twist it or turn it back and bring it back around it But usually that's sufficient. And the bigger one, I do go back around it. But see, that's that quick. And I'll do this one the same way. We are basically doing what the factories that sell these things to us do. Now, I brought my wreath back over here. And this larger pine cone, I'm going to try to plant it first because it is large and it's bigger than the others. And I already know that my barn is probably going to go here. I'll have a panel wagon here and here, or the bow here. So that means that I've got to go in between. And if you just kind of stage things, that way you know where you're planning on tying them down to. And then you can do your floral decorating and then put your elements in. That's how I do it. It's just easier for me so that I have less likely of having to undo something. So I want to kind of put this pine cone in here, and I'm deciding where to put it because it is rather large. And I think if I put it here, then I can style it and shape it a little more once I get it tied on. So I'll have to take my elements off, or I'll just keep knocking them. Twist tie that on there, but not so tight that I can't maneuver it. That's the great thing about working with this wire. But I will tuck that wire because I don't want it scratching anything. And just fold it towards the wreath. And then that way I can move that pine cone around. So it just has that little bit going on there. So since I did the large one to the inside, I probably need to do one to the outside. Up here towards the top area. And you can put them about anywhere. It's up to you. I'm going to once again go more towards the inside with this one. Now this time I'm going to put one right here on this outside perimeter. And you can always trim off the wire too if you have a long tail on it like I've got on mine. I may have to go back and trim those a bit. Just kind of turn him. He looks really cute there. This is starting to take shape. So that one's on the outside. These two are on the inside. And once again, just, you know, kind of staging where everything's going to be. Now with my padded wagon, I'm just going to glue this pipe cleaner right here in the center of the back. They'll give me the ability to pin it down. And I just put a spot there. Let that pipe cleaner attach. And it don't take a lot. I'll do a little crisscross across there in a couple of spots just to give it a little more security and insurance. And I'll do all three of them just like that. Alright, so I've got those glued on. And I'm going ahead. And I do leave my hanger on there. It just gives it a little spark of color as an ornament. And the great thing about doing these elements this way is if you ever rework your wreath, you can always reuse these elements on something else. But you want plenty of tie so that you can adjust your elements. And that's why I cut a big long piece, and then that way when I glue it, I got plenty to work with there. And I'll do each one of them so I can adjust that as I need to. And don't want to mash my wreath too much. So to make our bow, I've got our ribbon back out here that I've been using. And I also brought about my wrappies. I think that it's going to look great that way. But the way I go about it is I size up my bow, how big of a bow I need. And pretty much, you know, just stretching it across there, I already know that when I double that up. So I will take and put my ribbons together on this one. They are both the same width, so that might be a little tricky there. If I put them together and I decide my width, and then I will bring it back to itself once I decide how far over that needs to be. because by the time I double it up and bring it back to itself, and that's probably going to be about the space that I need. I always loop mine in the center just so I can get a hold of it and it doesn't slide out. So that's probably going to be about it. And then I will bring my loops forward. Okay, so that's doubled right there. And I will do them again. I think 4 loops probably be sufficient for this particular bow, because they'll basically give me 8 loops there with it doubled. So right here's where we begun. That's 1 loop, 2 loops, 3 loops. Just count them down. So 4, that should be plenty. Just make sure it's wide enough before I stop. I think it's going to be pretty hefty for this particular wreath. And you can leave the tails if you want to. I need to tie that, so I have me a twist tie here. Use my pipe cleaner. And a lot of times I will fold it like that, like I'll dip it in the center and then I'll push those backwards. I'm going to put my pipe cleaner around it. If I need to, I can tie it a little tighter. That looks pretty good. And that should give me enough to tie it on as well. And before I cut or do anything, I will pull my loops out to see if that's sufficient for me. If I'm content with that, that might be pretty good. And if it's not, I can make a smaller one to go in the center. So I'm going to clip that because I'll still need to add tails. Let's see how much that gives me. I like that pretty good. That's probably, my tails are generally the length of if I were to fold it again. That's how I judge it. It's just an easy math way to do it. Let's see what we got here. And then I will go the opposite on this side. Since I pulled that top one that way, I'll pull this one this way. And then you can always cross them in front of each other. Now to dovetail, I always do it real simple. If you fold your tail and the edge, think of it as your thumb. To make it easier, put the wire side towards your thumb if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed, do it the opposite way. So put the wire towards your less dominant hand, and then take your scissors and lay them at an angle towards the wire tip. And when you cut that, you'll end up with this perfect dovetail. Once again, your less dominant hand, take and lay it together, put the wire side towards your less dominant hand, lay your scissors where the point is going towards the tip, and cut towards the wire. And you end up with these perfect dovetails. You can do them singularly. A lot of people feel more comfortable doing them singularly. And I will add a tail because right here is where that bow is going to be. And if I need to shorten my tail, I can. This is where I'm going to tie it on. I'll put raffia in here as well. It needs to be fluffed out a little more. I need to add my tails before I do that. So I'm just going to cut off what I need. Is ending up on top. So I'm going to do this one the same way. And you can glue these or you can tie them in, whichever you want to do. A lot of times you can just take and lay them in there. Just do your twist tie over them. Once again, I just pinch it. Make sure you got at least an inch beyond your twist tie, so that when you go to tie it in there, it don't come undone on you. I know the bow's going to be there. Let's take this raffia. I'm just going to get a few strands here. Now the raffia, I will take and go out here and pull this up to that little tie that I made, and just kind of separate these so that it becomes a little more bushier, and it's easy to grab hold of it and just pull it. It don't take a whole lot of effort. You can catch it about anywhere. And it's very willing to be shredded that way, or torn and pulled upon. And that way you can get more out of your strand, because it'll roll up and get almost pipey like in some places, and then other places it'll be wide and flat. But you can get several out of that, 2 or 3 out of them, so you can look at them and tell which ones can be separated some more. Okay, so now I've got that stranded and messy and stretched out. And you can turn it like this so it give a little more spring. It just really, you just kind of work with it whenever you start to use it and decide which way you want to turn it, so that you get all that bounce and spread it out around it. And once again, you could take and tie that to the back of the bow if that's easier for you to harness it. So I just give it one twist. Now it's there. Then when I put it on there, I can spread that out. Just gives you some more control. And I'm going to tie this on to my wreath. So excited about the bow. Looks so good. Alright. And then if you need to trim this off, you can. Got my bow. Now last details is, one, add a hanger to the back. And then final details is I've got me some greenery here, and I'm going to add a little wreath on the door. And then maybe this one down here I could might just leave it, and then again I may add a wreath to its door, but I'm just going to use a little bit of greenery to do that with. I'm going to take one of these, clip it, and twist it. And I can, this one is long enough that I can do 2 wreaths out of this. And just make a little mini wreath. And just twist it together. Sometimes you don't have to twist it together, but I've got my hot glue gun going. Get them connected, and then trim this piece off. And then you can just take your scissors and trim it down and make it fit. Just a little bit hot melt. I'll do the other one up top. Same way. Now you can see it. A little bit of hot melt glue there. Glue my wreath on my little panel wagon. Let me bring my wreath down here where you can see it. I'm going to put my wreath on that padded wagon. So here's our wreath completed. I brought it in here and hung it up so you can see it a little bit closer and a little bit better. And we put our wreaths on our panel wagon, barn, our pine cones, and our beautiful bow. And this would be great on your front door. Simple, easy. You are right around $10 in this wreath, and this would definitely be in your uptown shops and sell for a lot more. Great bargain wreath. Beautiful Country Christmas Wreath.